And then let's look at the content for today. So today is about controlling Chrome with VBA. So the two ways that we've seen so far to interact with, well, I'm recording the video on my computer, so I'm going to try to stay seated here so my microphone is picking this up a little bit better. The two ways that we've seen so far to be able to interact with a web server through VBA, one through the web query wizard, and then two, last time we were together, we learned this object called the Microsoft XML HTTP object, which is just an object that doesn't try to render the page or anything. It just says, go get this page, and you get the HTML that comes back. So the two big deficiencies, the two things we can't accomplish with the web query wizard is, number one, it's got to be a page that we can go to directly. So like, you can't go to a page, enter a username and a password, click submit, and then go to the next page with the web query wizard. The second thing is that you don't get to see the HTML. All you see is what Excel tries to bring onto the worksheet, like the data. So if what you're after isn't expressed as data, but it's something kind of buried in the HTML, you just can't get it. Now, with the object that we learned last time, the XML HTTP object, you do have access to the HTML, but you still have to be able to go directly to the page. So what we're learning today is, how can you just say, all right, Excel, open up Chrome, and then have your Excel interact with the page, find where it says username and type in a username, find where it says password, type in a password and hit submit, and then wait for that page to load. And then once it's loaded, go and do something else. And so this is like more advanced stuff. And you're going to see how, like, when we actually get into this today, you'll see why we didn't do this from the beginning. This is quite a bit more complex. You're ready for it now. You weren't ready for it the second week of class. Okay, so to do this, we are going to install something, we're going to rely on something called Selenium. So Selenium is a project. So it turns out that we can, with VBA, we can directly control any web browser that exposes its core functionality to the component object model. The component object model is the way that VBA interacts with stuff. There is one browser that exposes its core functionality to the component object model. Can you guess what it is? Yeah, say it louder. Internet Explorer. Yeah, so back when Internet Explorer was like the default standard, this worked great. We didn't have to install anything separately. We could just literally just open up Internet Explorer directly from VBA, send instructions to it, and get them back. It was a little bit easier than what we're going to do today. With the happy demise of Internet Explorer, there's no other browser that we can control directly, but there's this project called Selenium that every other browser has said, you know what, we're going to play nice with Selenium so that browsers can be automated. So that means we have to install software to be able to do this, which used to be kind of available natively. So it's going to take us a little bit to get that installed. And so while that's installing, I'll tell you a little bit about the quote from Monday. But let's go ahead and follow this link, notes to install Selenium. And this is going to take you to a blog that I set up that I thought I would do way more notes on VBA, but it seems like I got 2 or 3 notes out here is all. But this is going to be like the information we need to get this installed. So because, oh, now I'm just wondering, I only taught you that XML HTTP object because we would need that to be able to interact with Gemini. So I haven't really thought through, could you use that to accomplish the last project number 6 in this class? And I think you probably could. So I think you can use either what we learned Monday to do the project number 6, or you can use what we're doing today. I think you'll be able to take your pick on that. Okay, so here is Selenium. So number 1 is to install Selenium Basic. So some guy back in 2016, it would be great if we had an easy way to work with Selenium through Visual Basic. And he published it up here on GitHub. It's free. It's this guy here, Florenber. I don't know what his whole name is, but he made this project. So I'm going to follow that link. I think I'm going to hold the control key down because I don't think it automatically pushes it to another tab. And so he's just published, like did a bunch of work and said, made it free for everyone. Here it is. So I'm going to download Selenium Basic EXE. It's 22 megabytes, so it's going to take a second to download. And so that will, it's not coming down faster than it did for me this morning in my office. So that has downloaded that Selenium Basic. So that is software that we have to install. So what that means is that if you're going to take this approach to do that project, you'll have to be on a computer that you can install on. So if you're one of my Mac users who kind of comes to class and watches and then goes and works in the library, you won't be able to install Selenium Basic on a library computer. You should be able to use the XML HTTP object that we learned on Monday to interact with the web server. Okay, so I've got that downloaded. I'm going to go ahead and install it. So I'm going to go find where it downloaded and just launch it to install. I think maybe I'm going to go launch it from my downloads folder. All right, we're going to install Selenium Basic on your computer. That looks great. Next. I accept the agreement. I have no idea what I'm agreeing to, but I'm accepting it anyway. And I'll do the full installation. Okay, now at this point, it's telling me where it's going to install it. I am going to copy that. Like maybe at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and open up that location. Copy that and open up that location on my computer. So using my File Explorer, I'll go to that location. Now, actually, it may not exist yet for you, the Selenium Basic part. So maybe just get it copied and then hit install, because we're going to need to make a modification here. So what this is doing is it's downloading like all of the information that we need to be able to work with Selenium from VBA, except for one thing. The one thing that it's not installing is it's not installing what's called the current driver for Chrome. So every time Chrome gets updated, what's the current version of Chrome? 122 or something. But every time Chrome gets updated, they also have to update the driver that we use to interact with it from Selenium. So it's a little bit of a nightmare because almost every time you do something new, it's like, okay, step one, I got to go get the correct driver. But this installation we only have to do once. Install the Selenium add-on for Firefox. I'm not going to do it. So now, if you couldn't go to Selenium Basic before, you should be able to paste that link that you copied and come right here, because this Chrome driver, like this is the software that interacts with Chrome, was made in 2016. There's been a few updates to Chrome since then. We have to go get the current driver to be able to work with Chrome. Now, how many of you, when you went through that installation, it said you had to install something else? It said you had to install like the .NET framework. Any of you? Is there anyone who's trying to follow along today who is not already installed? Okay, so it looks like we're good to go, good to move forward. So let's go ahead now and find the proper driver. That's the next part of our little notes. I'm going to come back to my notes on controlling Chrome with VBA. I downloaded the file. I remembered where installed it. Now it's download the Chrome driver. So scroll down a little bit more, step 2, I'm after this link here. So this link is going to tell us, hey, follow the link for stable, that'll take you lower on the page. And then we're after Chrome driver for Windows 64. So there's Chrome driver for Linux, for Mac, and other versions of Windows. We got to get the one for Windows 64. So I'm going to go all the link to stable. And I'm going to find Windows 64. So it's right here, Chrome driver, Win64. Now, why they give us a URL here without like just making it a link, I don't know, but you got to copy that link and then paste it in another tab. And that then downloaded this zip file that has the current Chrome driver in it. I'll go ahead and open up that folder. and I'll open up that zip archive. It has a folder in here, Chrome driver, Win64. I'll open up that folder, and that's the file that I'm after, Chrome driver.exe. Probably will say a date on it. So this was done March 25th of this year, so not very long ago. And these things release, I mean, several times a year, we'll get a new update to Chrome. So I have to replace that old 2016 Chrome driver with this one that I just downloaded. So I'm going to find where I went to that location. It's probably in the same location for you. Users, your username, and then the rest of this will be the same. App data, local, Selenium basic. And I'm just going to drag the new Chrome driver and just drop it right here on the, let's see. Yeah, I can't drop it right on the file. I have to kind of drop it somewhere where it says, hey, I'm copying this to Selenium basic. So looks like if I put it kind of on the header space of this, it'll copy. And I'll replace file in the destination. So now I've got the newer version of that Chrome driver.exe. Okay, anyone need a hand getting here? Tell me if you're successful so far to this point. Okay, so it looks like quite a few of you. Anyone saying, hold on, I'm almost there? Usually at this point, we've had several people saying, oh, it's taking me longer to install because I have to install the .NET framework. But I don't know what's changed. That hasn't happened for anyone today. That's good. I'm going to pause at this moment, which is where I was planning to tell you about the little story we skipped on Monday. Just vote. Who says, let's hear the story? Who says, no, let's move on? Oh, story it is. So the quote from Monday was from Abraham Clark. Abraham Clark, member of the Second Continental Congress from New Jersey. He's not captured. Remember, his fellow delegate was. Richard Stockton was captured, held as a prisoner. Clark isn't captured, but he has a son, Thomas Clark, who's an artillery captain in the Second Continental, or in the Continental Army. He was actually with George Washington crossing the Delaware, going to attack Trenton. Shortly after that, he's redirected somewhere else and he gets captured. He's put on the prison ship Jersey. Prison ships were horrific. You can imagine that the sanitation was grim. To give you an idea, during the whole American Revolution, about 5,000 American soldiers are killed in battle. For the whole 8-year war, 5,000 soldiers. About another 7,000 will die of wounds received in battle, sometimes years later. 8,000 will die at the hands of the British on the prison ships. Being assigned to a prison ship was virtually a death sentence. And when the British realized that they had the son of a signer in custody, they gave him special treatment in the form of regular beatings. And they communicated these beatings to his father, not through a political channel or through a military channel, but through personal correspondence. We beat your son today. He didn't take it very well. We're going to beat him again next Tuesday. You can stop him. All you have to do is sign. Trying to get him to sign a letter of recantation. Now, Clark's got three options. He can just ignore it, ignore the correspondence. He could give in, capitulate. He could take his name off the Declaration of Independence. Those two are clear. The third one is not especially clear, and it arises because the American Revolution is unique among wars in human history because it is the first war ever where a political authority is making tactical decisions. In every other war prior to this, if there's a political authority involved, they make strategic decisions and leave the tactics to the generals, not the Second Continental Congress. They decide who to attack, when to attack, where to attack. And so his third option was to use his political influence to effect a military response to his son's condition. Of these three, he chooses the first one. He makes no response. When the British realized that the beatings aren't motivation enough, they put his son into solitary confinement and they withhold food. And they communicate to his father, we will feed your son when you sign. So now Abraham Clark knows that his decision is literally, he is deciding on his son's life. Again, he faces the same three choices. We don't know what went through his mind as he's making this decision. Like from some members of the Second Continental Congress, like they were great journal keepers. John Adams, we know everything he thought about every thing that they were debating because he used his journal to help him process his thoughts. Like he would write all the reasons why he's in favor of this argument. And the process of writing it was like, I think I've changed my mind. He'd cross it off and he'd write a totally different response. But he used his journal to process that. From Thomas Jefferson, we know the temperature and humidity every day that he was in Philadelphia. We kept a journal, it was a different kind of journal. But Abraham Clark, nothing. So this next part of speculation, I don't really know, but I have to believe that he made this decision not on his own, but like with his wife. It's her son too, trying to decide what to do. And in what seems to me is more than some kind of cosmic coincidence, we have here at the founding of our nation, Abraham and his wife, Sarah, who are called upon to sacrifice their son. And they do. Again, you'll make no response, and Thomas Clark will die as a direct result. Today, we look at Abraham Clark's decision, and we don't understand it. And it's because we've really lost connection to this idea of public virtue. Public virtue means that every individual needs to make some sacrifice for the good of the country from time to time. Kind of what we heard from John Philpott Curran today. That if you want to be able to maintain your liberty, you've got to be involved. You can't just sit back. But for elected officials, there's like this additional meaning that is it's holding the representative vote absolutely sacred. In a sense, well, the people of New Jersey elected Abraham Clark to represent their interests in the seat of power. And for him to do anything with that influence to inure a benefit to himself or to his family was a violation of public virtue. It was just considered immoral. And it was something that he refused to do, even though it would cost his son his life. And in a sense, the people of Abraham Clark valued my vote above his own son's life, which is crazy to me because we're so disconnected from this value that was common at the time of the founding. When I think about what value I've placed on my own vote from time to time, I'm embarrassed. There have been times in my earlier life when I couldn't be troubled to show up to the polls. Other times when I did show up and it was like, I have no idea who these people are or the merits of what I'm voting on. I've been better lately, but yeah, that's public virtue. The rest of the story is kind of interesting. It turns out the Second Continental Congress did become aware of Thomas Clark's condition before he died. And they ordered George Washington to starve a British officer that we had in custody in retaliation. And what do you think? There's no way Washington would do this. Who says Washington would never do that? No one? Few of you are like that? Who says, yeah, Washington would do that? Most of you aren't voting. That's interesting. So this is an order that Washington just abhors, but he understands the chain of command. He knows he's not at the top, and he's prepared to follow this order. But before he does, he writes a letter to his counterpart, William Howe. Now, it's Richard Howe who's kind of over the prison ships. He doesn't have an open channel of communication with Richard Howe. Instead, he writes to William Howe, Richard Howe's brother, who's in charge of land troops. And he says in this letter, we have British officers as prisoners of war, and we could starve them too. But men of honor ought not to behave that way. And this rebuke from what he sees as his colonial counterpart is enough to get Thomas Clark fed. And he will live through the end of the war, but he will die shortly after as a direct result of the time of starvation he had on the prison ship. Kind of a sad story. And of all the founding values that we've lost, this is the one that I think we've lost. Most of us don't feel a private connection to that we have this abiding responsibility to be involved in making sure the government runs correctly. All right. So now to test to make sure that this is right, over here where we dragged our new Chrome driver, I'm going to come down to this folder called scripts. And inside of scripts, now I can run start chrome.vbs. This is just going to test if we're able, through this basic environment, to be able to invoke and start up Chrome. So I'm going to run start Chrome. And if it launches the Chrome browser, mission accomplished. So here's Chrome. It tells us Chrome is being controlled by automated test software. So you're not going to sneak this past someone unless they're not paying attention, I guess. I'm going to click OK to quit, and it will go away. but that lets me know Selenium Basic installed and configured. Questions? All right, let's move on then to the workbook for today. So I'm going to come back to our class blog. I'm going to download these two files, parser.cls, we'll use that later, and then here's our workbook. It's an XLSX file. I already have it open. So let's make sure, I'm going to make sure that I save that as an XLSM. So file, save as, change this to be an XLSM. Downloads, workbook type, XLSM, and save. All right, so here's the context for today. So for whatever reason, we have a list of like trucking companies, like where they're from, and like their U.S. Department of Transportation number. And we need to get their phone number and their fax. Who has a fax number anymore? Let's at least get their phone number. If we have time, we'll get their fax number as well. Now, it tells us here's a URL that might be helpful to us. Great. I'm just going to go ahead and open that URL and take a look at it. So this is a Department of Transportation site. Oh, and look, I can search by U.S. Department of Transportation number. It was funny, not long after I had like built this example. Let me go ahead and I'll do the search first. So here's the Duke brothers. I'm going to copy their U.S. Department of Transportation number. I'm going to plug it in here and hit search. So you'll see that like what we're doing here, this is akin to putting in a username and a password and clicking the login button. Right? This is exactly the same thing. Filling out a form, submitting some information, and then it's going to come here and say, we found what you're looking for. Great, I want to follow that link. I click on that link, and that brings me to the information. And here we can get their phone number and their fax. So this is the information that we'd like to automate, bringing all that in. Not long after I made this example, my wife and I were driving out to visit someone in Minnesota. I don't remember. We had family out there. And we're like driving down the road. And there's a semi-truck going kind of slow in the right-hand lane. And so we go over to the left-hand lane. It's a 2-lane highway in the middle of Nebraska somewhere. And as we're going to pass him, the truck like starts to move over. And then realizes that we're there, it kind of jerks back over. And we drove past him, and then he came out after us, and he was driving really aggressively. It was like right on our tail. And then so we slowed down, and then he came in front of us and slowed down. And then we were going to pass him, and he moved over, so he couldn't pass. It was like a creepy thing. And he had a U.S. Department of Transportation number on the back of his car. I know how to find the telephone number if I have the U.S. Department of Transportation number. And it was before I had a phone that was capable of doing that on the road. So I called my sister, go to this website, give him this number. I got the phone number of the guy's company. And I called him and said, hey, driving behind one of your drivers out here in Nebraska, and he's driving really aggressively. I'm actually afraid for my safety. And I said, do you want the license plate on the truck? And he's all, no, I only have one driver in Nebraska. I know who it is. It's like again. So it was all, he's all, hold on, I'll get him on the radio. And it was about 3 minutes later, he said, he's going to pull over at the next exit and let you pass. It's all, thank you very much. So this information can be handy, in more ways than one, apparently. Okay. So that's what we'd like to do. We would like to automate the process of saying, all right, let's pull this number on, let's go get the phone numbers, and let's fill in this column. And we're going to use Chrome to do it because we cannot, in fact, if we look here, could we go right to this? Does this have, maybe this URL has the ID in it. It has the, what's it called? U.S. Department of Transportation number, 1450026. No, it's got different identifiers. That's not how we actually, that number that we have doesn't get us to this page. We've got to go somewhere else, do a search, follow the link to get here. And so that whole process, we're going to try to automate with Chrome. So that's where we're headed. So let's go ahead and take a look at the code that we already have here in the workbook. So Alt F11. Hopefully I have some code in the work. Oh, I don't, because it was an XLSX. Did I give you some code to start with? Because I don't remember typing this code in the past. There's no other text. It's not too much to type. It was more than I wanted to type by hand, but let's go ahead and do it. Let's start here and get ourselves going. So bring this down just a bit. How do I get that to go smaller? Well, there we go. Oh, you know what I can do? I can hide those. Hide floating menu controls. Good. All right, so insert a module. And sub. I'm going to call this Google search. We're going to do a simple search. We're going to do a simple one dealing with Google first, and then we'll move on to our one that's dealing with this other website. Google search. Okay, so step one is going to be to get a connection to the right tools. So let me just put a note here. We're going to, we need a reference to the Selenium type library. So tools, references, and we're looking for the Selenium type library, which should be available now that we've installed it. Selenium type library. You may recognize that path where it's located, that same path where we installed it. So username, app data, local, Selenium basic. Say okay. So that's going to give us the ability to create objects that were defined in there. All right, so I'm going to dim bot as a new web driver. So that's getting me the Selenium basic web driver. Going to allow me to control Chrome. Now I'm going to call a method of that, bot.start, and then in quotes, it's going to be Chrome. Because we can install the drivers for Firefox or for Edge, or you can do this on the Mac too. You could do Safari. So this is all possible. We're just doing Chrome today. Okay, now, it's not too bad to type bot.get, and I'm going to give it a URL. URL, maybe I'm going to go check this URL like in a browser first to make sure I'm getting the right URL. So https://google.com/advanced search. I'll copy that before I hit enter because sometimes it'll redirect, but copy that, hit enter. Looks like it didn't. So this is the search page that I'm going to want to come to. So I want to load this up in Chrome. I want to type something in that I'm looking for here. And I want to come down and click the advanced search button. I know that's a good URL. I'm going to paste that URL in here. And why don't I go right to that point and stop? Okay, I'm going to run this. Now I've got that advanced search open here where I've got multiple tabs. But when I do this, it should launch a new instance of Chrome, and it should have that little banner at the top that says, hey, Chrome is being controlled by automation software. So I'll run this. Oops. Yeah, run that one. It's opened up Chrome and brought me to this page. So I need to find some way to tell VBA to find this particular, this is what I want to type into. Stay signed up. So let me just inspect it. I'm going to right click this and choose inspect. I have to scroll down if you're on Windows 10 or Windows 11 and choose inspect. And I'm going to make this float so that I can see a little bit bigger. So it's a separate now window that's doing the inspecting. And let me zoom in a bit. All right, now that that's open, I'm going to do that process again. I'm going to right click this and inspect. Sometimes the first time it opens, it doesn't actually take you to what shows, what renders this part of the page. There we go. So this is the tag that actually brings us to that page. This is the tag that makes that input form. Like whoever was creating this HTML form, that's what they set that up as. And there are several tools that I have in Selenium to find a part of the page that I'm after. And if it has an ID, that's the one I like the best, because IDs are intended to be unique. No two elements on a web page should have the same ID. The next one that I like is a name. If it has a name, that's almost always unique, but doesn't have to be unique. But name would be good too. If I have to go after it by class, a lot of them could have the class. And so I could say, hey, give me all the elements that have this class. And then I can kind of look at those individually and see which one I'm after. But since we've got one with the ID, we're going to be able to go at it directly. And although as I'm looking at this, do you have the same ID, XX4UFF? I have the same one. This should be okay. We should be able to use that to go get it. Okay, so in my code, I'm going to come before my stop, and I'll just drag my current statement back up there. I'm going to say bot. Why don't we do? Yeah, I'll do it this way in one line. Bot dot find element by ID. Find element by ID. We can see that's an option here. Then I'm going to tell it the ID that I'm looking for. I forgot what it was. I'm going to copy it. Is the lowercase f on the end? Was. Okay, so that is calling this find element by ID method, and that is going to return a reference to that object inside of Chrome. Whoa. So far, we've dealt with objects inside of Excel. This is going to allow us to invoke a method of an object inside of Chrome. And so I am going to call the send keys method of that. And I'm going to tell it the keys I'm sending. So in just not in parentheses, in quotes, I'm going to search for the Colonial Heritage Festival. If that is successful, I will have sent the keys there. I'm going to, before I run this, I'm going to bring that form up so you can see it. That's not the one. This is the one here. Okay, so I'm trying to put something right over here. I'm going to run that and see if it does. So it just wrote that right into Chrome. Like the first time you write code that does that, and you're like, I'm now like pushing data into Chrome, you're like, it's like, whoa, this is powerful. Now our next step is going to be to hit that search button. So I'm going to come back down here to my search button. I'm going to look at the search button and see, is there anything on this I can use to identify it? And so has a class, JFK button, John F. Kennedy. Style, there's no ID, there's no name, but I can get it by a class. So let me just go ahead and get it by a class and we'll see if we can do this. In fact, maybe for this one, let me do this. Let me declare another variable up here because this one's not quite as clear. I'm not sure that I can get there directly. So let me just dim elem as a web element. So a web element is just like one part of a page. That would be ELEM. I guess Elm would work fine too. So now I'm going to set ELEM equal to bot dot find bot dot find element by class. And then I'm going to give it the class, which was JFK button. JFK BUTT. Wonder if that's some tribute to the fallen president. I don't know. So let me go run that line, and I'm just going to see, did I get access to it? See, what I did up here was I said, find the reference using find element ID and then call the method directly. Here, I'm saying, let's find the element, and then let's just hook up a variable to it. And it ran without error. That's good. Let me just see if I can print it. So print ELEM. Can't print the whole object, but I can print an attribute of the object. And the attribute that I want is that called the outer HTML. And if I've got the right one, I should see the information about that being the button. Is this, what did it say on the button? It says advanced search. So that should be specified here. Yeah, the value is advanced search. So this looks like that's what I'm after. So now I can see that I've hooked up to that. Now I'm ready to click that. So I'm going to say ELEM.click. And I'll go execute that line. And it'll be interesting to see if we can tell, does the page load before or after the yellow line gets to the stop? That's what I'm going to be interested to find out. So I'll hit play. Stuff to tell. It looks like it might have gotten there. It might have gotten here first, but I'm not sure if it got there first, like after it got the page before it rendered. I think it might have waited until the page was loaded. The Colonial Heritage Festival. Oh, look at that. A little advertisement for what you might want to do this 4th of July. It's actually 4th through 6th. This is from last year. But free event. Come, you'll see me operating the 18th century printing press at the Sarah Park in Orem. Okay, enough advertisement. Free event. It's a great way to spend the 4th of July. All right, and that's the end of that example. So that example just kind of shows we can open up Chrome. We can use this driver to find information on the page, interact with that page, even click buttons. So let me go ahead and copy this, get rid of the stop. Maybe I'll leave the stop in. And now let's do one that's called get phone number. And why don't we make this one a function? We'll have this one return a phone number. So function get phone. Let's pass it in a row as a long integer. FUNC TION. And we're still going to want to do all this other stuff. Yeah, so probably still need a web element. We'll start up Chrome. Here's where we're going to go to a different page. So here now, let's go ahead and go to that first page that we're looking for. So I had that URL here. That's the one we're after. Okay, so we're going to get there. And you know what? I'm just going to move my stop. Move my stop up to there. Let's just see if we can get to that point. Because we'll need to inspect a little bit to find out how we're going to interact with this page. So I'm ready to run. Oh, I can't just run this because it's expecting a row. So let me go ahead and make like a sub runner. So just do a debug.print of the result of that. And let's go ahead and get the phone from row number 2, which is where the Duke Brothers trucking is. Right, so I should be able to run that, and it should get to that page and then stop. Launch Chrome, take me to that page, and then it stops right here. Excellent. So far, so good. Show me how we're doing on a scale of 0 to 5. With me, coming along. Excellent. All right, well, same process. Let's track this down. So we're after U.S. Department of Transportation number. Do we have to click this? I don't remember. I wonder what happens if we just set this. Let's go here. Maybe if we set this, it'll automatically go down here. I'm not positive it will, but let's look at this. Let me inspect this one now. Oops. I'm expecting to see an inspect here. Why don't I? Expecting something close to it. I'm going to separate out my window again and dock it. Zoom in a bit. All right, let me try to inspect it one more time. This is one I'd love to inspect. I don't know why it doesn't let me inspect. So I'm just going to click something next to it and try to inspect it. Should get me close. So here's the label, U.S. Department of Transportation number. So maybe this next thing is what I'm after. Oh yeah, here's an input. That's the kind of thing you type into. It has a name, DOT. Ah, this has got to be it. The name is DOT. So let's go ahead and go after it by name. It doesn't seem like it has an ID. So we'll go after it by name. Okay, so instead of by ID, let's change this to name. And the name is DOT. Was that capitalized? Yeah, uppercase DOT. And we're going to send keys. And that's going to be the Department of Transportation number off of that particular row. So let's just assume that we're on the right sheet. So cells, row number, row, column number, E. Got the value that we're after. I don't need a period there. And dot value. Okay, so if I've got this right, that should plug in a Department of Transportation number there. I'm going to move my stop down. Run it to there. See if it worked. What I'm not sure about is if it automatically clicked that button. So let me click this one. Let me clear this off. Let me click this one, and I'm going to run that part again, and we'll see if it selects that as the search approach, the search method. Oh yeah, looks like it did. That's great. So we plugged in the number. Now we just got to go after the search button. Right click. Again with the no inspect. Is it here? I just don't see it. Inspect next to it, I guess. Yeah, here it is. Type submit. Ah, it has a name of submit, uppercase submit. So we should be able to go after that one by name as well. So we'll just do this here. We'll do it in 2 steps here. That's fine. So by name, and it is submit. pretty confident that that's that because I'm guessing there's only one object named submit there. What would happen if there were two objects named submit? Here I'm asking, because I'm saying get element by name, it would get just the first one that had that name. For each of these, there's a corresponding get elements by name. So if there's multiple ones, this sends me back a collection of web objects. And so I have to treat it differently. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be the first one. So I'm going to leave it as get element by name, and I'll run that to my next stop. Yeah, it looks like it found it and clicked on it. So now we're here. Oh, but now I got to find that link and click on it. Oh, as I'm looking at this, I might have been able to kind of skip that first part because I can see the Department of Transportation number is here. So like another way to have gotten here would be to have configured this URL and come straight to here. Probably could have skipped that first part, but I wanted to show you the process of filling out a form and clicking a button. So I'm okay with that. So let's go and inspect this and let's see what this is. Inspect this one. Oh, will let me inspect this one. So this is an href. So it's a link. Whew. This looks hard. I don't see any kind of class on it. I don't see any ID. Oof. Oh, but you know, there is a class here, but I bet that class is the same as several other places. I'm just going to kind of look on this page and see where does this show up. I wonder if your class name, how many would I be dealing with here? 3. That's one of 3. Oh, but it's the first one of 3. Okay. So if I was to get an element by class, this is the first one with that class, that will give me this TD, and this TD then has this anchor inside of it. So that's a common thing. If I can't go directly after the tag I'm after, I can go after a tag that contains it, and that will narrow down my scope, and then I might be able to work from there. So let me give that a shot. So here, I've clicked that. I've already used the element, but this element now is referring to an element that's on a page that's gone. I don't need that anymore, so I'll just use elem again. So let me set elem equal to bot dot find element by class. And the class name is that. So I'm going to run that and then just take a look and see, did I get what I thought I was getting? Question mark ELEM dot attribute. And the attribute I'm looking for is outer HTML. Yeah. So it's got that, and it has in it the tag that I'm looking for. Oh, this is great. Because now that I've got a reference to that element, I can query that element, and it's just looking at what's in there. So now this is the only anchor. Like this is the only link that's inside this little fragment. So now I can get the link by, I can get the element by looking at its tag name. So now I'm going to set elem equal to elem dot get, no, is it find element by tag. And the tag is that anchor tag. I don't remember if you have to put them in uppercase. And I can do it here. Looks like you don't have to put them in uppercase, but I think they'll work. I'm going to go ahead and put them in lowercase because that's my example from last semester. Drag that back up and run it. Looks like it ran without error. You get rid of what elem used to be. Let's look at this one. Yeah, got it. So now I've gotten to the anchor. I just need to click it. So I should just be able to do an lm.click again. And we'll run it. And it followed that link and took us over to the page that actually has the details on it. I am so close. I'm on the page that has the phone number that I'm after. So let me come down here and right click the phone. Right click something close to the phone that I can inspect. I have never noticed it rejecting me the ability to inspect before. We'll go below it. There we go. So I'm a little bit lower than I meant to be. What do we have here? Got this table. It's got 3 rows on it. Company details, where is them? Where does it say company details? You see it? Oh, right here. Okay, so we have another table after that one. It's got 3 rows. What do we have here? Fleet size. You can probably see where it says fleet size. I don't see it. Oh, it's right here. That's too low. Okay, so I'm between those. So it's got to be in here somewhere. Non-breaking space. Here's a row. Oh, and that row has another table inside of it. Oh, this looks better. Kind of drilling in here. This looks good. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows. 1, 2, 3, a break, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so it looks like it's the second from the end row. I bet it's this one right here. There's the phone number that I'm after. Ooh. Here's what I'm going to do. I can see that there are multiple of these that are this middle TD FMSA class. But let me narrow it down to these. And then once I'll get a collection of those, and then I'll loop through them and just kind of look at each one until I find the one that says telephone. That's how I'm going to give this a shot. So we'll be getting elements by class. Now, this one, I'm going to need to have a whole collection of elements. So let me dim LMs as web elements, plural. So I've declared another variable LMs as web elements. And after I've clicked, I'm going to set LMs equal to bot dot find elements by class. Find elements by class. And did I copy it? I don't remember. I did. So I should have put that before the stop. So I'll run that. Hopefully that'll run okay. Looks like it ran okay. Now I'm interested to see something about LMs. LMs.count. There are 5 of them. So I wonder if I can look at one of them, LMs sub 1 dot attribute outer HTML. Yeah, that's the number. So it looks like it's that one right up here. Oh, so this is going to be 0 base. So 0 will be the name. I've got all of these up here, I think. Maybe it's only the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, yeah. Why we have 5, I'm not quite sure. But let's see if we have the one that we're looking for in there. So at this point, I think I've got a collection. Each collection is a web element. I think I'm ready to loop through it. How do you want to do it? For next loop or for each loop? I have split, but I heard for each first. Let's give for each a try. So the for each, because I've got a collection of objects here, so I should be able to make a for each loop and have an object that can kind of connect onto each one of those individually through the loop. And fortunately, I already have a variable elem that should be of the type that can connect onto these. For each elem in elems. Next. First time through, the elem variable will connect onto the first one of the elements. Next time, the next one of the elements, and so forth. So let's just do debug.print of elem.attribute. And we're looking for the outer HTML. And just because that's going to print a bunch of HTML up there, let me go ahead and like print out some kind of line so that I can see them where they separate. And I'll print a bunch of equals here. Okay, so I'm going to move my current statement up to for each and run that. Okay, so there they are. U.S. Department of Transportation number, an address, then telephone. Ah, it's only these white ones that it is. So it must be getting those three here and then some more that I can't see at the moment. Now I have access to each one of those individually. Only the one I'm after is going to say telephone in it. I'm after one that actually says, where is it? Street address, telephone. Yeah, it says telephone. In fact, maybe I'll look for it to say telephone with those two brackets near it. I'm looking for the one that actually says that inside of it. So let me say if elem or if in string, starting at 1, looking at elem dot attribute inner HTML, looking for this. If that is greater than 0, then I found the one I'm after. At that point, how do I find it? At that point, I've got, any thoughts? Got 3 table data elements here. What do you think? What should I do? How am I going to go from that block that I've got there? We could, at this point, kind of continue what we've done, right? Do another search inside of this one and so forth. But it would be nice if we had some tools that were just kind of designed for parsing HTML files. And we do. So that's the other file we download, that parser.cls. So it's an object that I wrote that just has some tools that are kind of handy for parsing HTML. So I'm going to take this little HTML fragment, and I'm going to use that parser to parse it. But at this point, I think dealing with it as text is going to be easier than to try to keep going in at the object level to find it. So I just want to take this block of text and find the phone number in it. So let me go ahead and stop my code, because I'm going to have to import that other object. So we've downloaded parser.cls file, and it's just the module that's been exported. It's one of these modules. I say insert class module. It's a class module. So a class module is a definition of an object. So we're going to import one of these. I'll choose File, Import File. I'll go find that parser.cls file. in my downloads. So here's parser.cls. And that brought in now this parser file. This has got a bunch of code, properties, and methods that I've written that will be handy for doing this. So it's not that long. We're not going to really look at it. I'm just going to show you how to use it. So I'm going to close that one. Now that I've created it, over here in get phone, I'll dim a variable of that type. Dim p as a new parser. And that will create an instance of that object. So I'm going to go ahead and run right to here. And we should, hopefully we'll see it open up. We'll see it open up Chrome and kind of go through that whole process. Yeah, did it kind of quickly. So we're now on this page. We've found it. We've got this text that we're working with. We'll just, oh yeah, here's my telephone text. We've got this right here is now inside of the outer HTML attribute of my element. So I'm going to bring that into the parser. So here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say p.text is equal to that outer HTML property. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting into that parser, that object that knows how to kind of work with HTML text, I'm putting that text into the parser. So that parser is going to work on its text with its other methods that it has to work. I'm then going to say, by the way, your position is 1. So start at the very beginning. We're going to be doing stuff like mid, left, in string, all built into this function, and it has a position property that says I'm currently looking at the beginning of the file. And now I'm just going to tell it to move that position. So it's starting at the beginning of this text here, and I just want to move until I find width equals. I think that string right there, the first time it's going to say that'll find that. The first time it finds that. So I'm going to say p.move to width. And so instead of my position now being here, it will advance my position down to right after it found that width equals. Let me go ahead and run these things just kind of one step at a time. So I'll do these with F8. My F8 is now. Oops, I'm going to do Shift F8. So in Shift F8, that should set the position. I should be able to ask those now here. We just delete this off and say, what is my position? It's at 135 because we've done the move to. So that's 135 characters in. I should be able to look at my text. And that's the text that I'm working on. But now it's come here to 135 characters in. Now I just need to get it. Let me move it a little bit more until I find that closing tag mark. Well, the next time I do a move to, it will move from that position till it finds the next thing I'm looking at. So from there, I'll say p.move to. And we will move to the closing tag. I'm at 135, I'll go run that one. I'll see what my position is again. Should have just advanced it a little bit. Now it's at 141. So 135, 141. I'm now ready to get the text that I'm after. Probably should have a variable to put it in. So let me come up here and make a variable called phone. For the string. And now I'm going to say my phone equals p.getText. GetText will return all the text from wherever the current position is until the next occurrence of the text that you give it. And so that's going to be the ampersand sign. So after that second move to, my current position will be right there. And I'm going to say get everything until I find the ampersand. So that should bring back that little block. And that should put the phone number in phone. Let's take a look and see what phone is. We got it. Now we just have to return it. So maybe here at the end, let's see. I was looping through that. So at this point, I've set my return value. Well, I've set the phone variable. Let me exit my for loop. And let me now return phone. So get phone is the name of my function. And we're going to return it. Get phone equals get rid of this stop. Get rid of that stop. And this should print because when we called this, we told it to print the result of the function. So let me go ahead and clear out my immediate window, finish running this, and it should print that phone number out there. Here it is. So it looks like it still had a little bit more to do. So it did a little more printing, but it did return that value. Let me get rid of all my debug.prints in here. Get them all. So now I'll run this, tell it to get off of row 2, brings open the thing and then returns back the number. If we want to get 3, of course, we could make a loop that loops across this and does them all. I think you get that by now. But I'll run that and it should pick up number 3. Now, this is not especially, what was the trouble here? Oh, this is old. This is an old list of numbers. Apparently that number is no longer here. So we want to kind of do some error handling for this. So why don't we do that? Why don't we do this? Let's say if we're doing this, if we ever have an error, we're just going to return nothing. So I'm going to come up here and say on error, row 2, done. And then just put done down here. It'll return a 0-length string because it won't have ever set get phone. Done, colon. What we're saying, if there's ever an error running this, just jump down to done. Stop that one. It's not especially efficient because it opens the browser every time. So there's some overhead involved with it. And we could certainly change that. So the bot declared down here, once it goes out of scope, it goes away. We could declare it as a module level variable and then it would stay open, but this gets you the idea. Still having an error. Oh no, it did. Like it closed on its own. It took a minute to do it, but it closed on its own. So just returned an empty string. So that's it. That's what it takes to be able to open up Chrome, get in, find the elements, remote control it, and then parse the data that's in it. Any questions here? Yes. All right. What else do we have to cover in this semester? This is now everything you need to do to finish the class. Oh, not quite. There's one more element that'll show up on the final exam, and that is when I teach you how to make custom ribbons, so that a ribbon that'll work follow the workbook. Other than that, that'll be the last thing that'll end up in the exam, but you do have enough to finish the last project. So you're wondering what to do between sessions of conference this weekend. finish those projects. All right, thanks for coming. Class dismissed.